Hi, I'm your host, Marsha Florence with Just Ask Talk Show. Today's show, ladies and gentlemen, is Understanding Caregivers Fatigue and Dementia. Hurry back and join us. Hi, I'm your host, Marsha Florence with Just Ask Talk Show. Today's show, ladies and gentlemen, is Caregiver Fatigue and Dementia. And as I always say, do we have a doctor in the house? Yes, we do. Today we have Dr. Asha Shah Jahan. Good afternoon, Dr. Asha.
Good afternoon, Marcia. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. Now, first of all, I want to make sure that I get the name right.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
okay,
Beautiful.
well, okay, thank you. Now, you know, we do special segments called Just Ask the Doctor, and today, so we have you here with us, and we're talking about understanding caregiver fatigue and dementia. So can you first start off with a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a family physician. I work at Corewell Health. I'm also an associate professor at Oakland University William Beaumont School of Medicine, and I do a lot of community outreach. I'm the medical director of community health for the Corewell Grosse Pointe Hospital. And so with that role comes a lot of patients, a lot of community members that are struggling with dementia. And I personally am passionate about this topic because unfortunately my mother also has dementia and was diagnosed at an early age. So my father is the primary caregiver, I'm the secondary caregiver, so this topic is near and dear to my heart.
Okay, and I truly can understand that. So, you know, by you being so busy as a physician yourself, I mean, how do you take on this role to combat fatigue so that you don't get burnt out?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is that once you have a loved one that has dementia, it affects the entire family. And so some of the things that start happening is like you have to start seeing your loved one in a different light. So I think for me, it was a lot of adjustment, seeing my mom kind of in a different role. Like I suddenly was like the motherly role, and that's really hard to do. And for my father, it's very difficult as a spouse to start doing that caregiving role. So I think some of the challenges when it comes to looking at caregiver fatigue and emotional fatigue is first looking at the role reversal and kind of really accepting that. And I think in addition to that, like I really had to learn early on how to cope. And many times what we start seeing is that as a caregiver, you start having issues with isolation. You're not able to go out as much. You're not able to take your loved one out places. And there becomes a lot of sort of social isolation, a lot of depression, a lot of fear and anxiety about what's going to happen next and what to expect. So it's a very long journey.
Yeah. Well, you know, as a person, myself, have been a caregiver many times over for family members.
Yeah.
We may not have experienced dementia, but in the bond of trying to be a caregiver, period, across the board, you lose a lot of what we call independence because now you have someone dependent on you, and the caregiving atmosphere just changes your whole dynamics for how you once were or are. So on that note, it's like, do you recommend anything, or how does your program work with family members who are struggling with this right about now?
Yeah, so I think, like, for example, in my situation, I'm a working physician. I have to work Monday through Friday. I did make sure that my shifts were now no longer on weekends so that I could be home on the weekends to kind of like give my father some company at home and also help caregive with my mom. My father took an early retirement and stayed home Monday through Friday. I mean, he's there every day with her. But I think that that's some of the things you have to start creating boundaries, and maybe one of the first steps would be like, okay, who is going to be at home, and how do we kind of share the responsibilities? If you have other family members that can come by and be at home, that's helpful too, because in our situation, my mother is at home, and I think most of us want to keep our loved ones at home as long as possible.
So how do you seek out support groups or services that you know that can help you get through the hurdles of trying to be a caregiver without being burnt out.
Yeah, so I think so. Some of the things that you might want to do initially is like when the diagnosis first comes, there's a lot of, again, fear, and people think they want to avoid the topic. They want to just keep everything as normal as possible. But I think some of the first things you have to do is, one, seek help from your physician. Because when you're starting to see these signs of dementia in your loved one, you want to confirm, is this really truly dementia, or is it something else? There are a lot of other more treatable diseases that present as dementia. So that's the first thing. And then secondly, then you'd have to see a specialist like a neurologist or a neuropsychiatrist to help get that diagnosis. After you get the diagnosis, you want to start looking at social resources. So asking your physician's office, is there a social worker that can help navigate some of the resources for you? One of the biggest resources that helped us is the Area Agency on Aging. So that's national and local. So you want to find your local chapter and see what is it that you qualify for. So for us, we were trying to keep our mom at home. We have a 2-level home, and the bedroom is upstairs, and she was having trouble going up the stairs. We were like, what do? Do we downsize into a ranch home? Do we try to convert one of the rooms downstairs into a bedroom, but there's not a full bath down there? And so we were looking at things like getting a stair lift in the home and trying to just make the home more comfortable for her. So we did have a bathroom in our basement, and so we were able to make a curbless shower. So some of these things, like getting a curbless shower, getting the home safe, like safe-proof.
Safety is first.
Right, and then getting the handrails, making sure you have a shower with a long nozzle, making sure that you might need a hospital bed in the house or a stair lift. These are all things that if you call the Area Agency on Aging, they can kind of give you different agencies. You might have, your insurance company might cover some of it depending on your income. There are social programs. So looking at first thing is like, okay, I want to keep my loved one at home. How do I keep my loved one at home? What do we need to make our home safer? Is it getting cameras installed even? You want to make sure that you can't be in the room all the time. If something happens like a fall, you've got an alarm system.
That's one of my recommendations to all people, that's taking care of your loved ones, regardless if it's dementia or not. If you're not able to be there 24/7, and we have the ability to have camera systems in our house.
Yeah.
So it's to our advantage now to utilize those services, not just outside the house, but in the house.
Right.
Where you can say, I can go to work and I still can watch mom from my monitor.
Right, or my phone.
Right, yeah. If I can talk to her or say something to her, I can watch the doorbell, who's coming, who's going. At one point in time, we couldn't do any of that.
Right.
And now we have the technology to do all of that. And so it's actually a help instead of a hindrance for people to have camera systems in the home. Now, some families are like, oh, no, I don't want cameras in my house.
Right.
But if you have to go to work or you got a busy schedule or lifestyle, you have to incorporate some of these things to keep going forward.
Right, or even just running to the grocery store. It might take you 10 minutes to go to the grocery store, but you feel hesitant, like, what if something happens while I'm gone?
Right.
So I think the camera service has been really helpful for us. I have it on my phone. I can, if I'm in the middle of work, I can just check and see what's going on. You can talk to her from there, and that's like through the service of Ring. So.
Yep, all of that is just, very supportive. And, like you said, like when it's time to do home modification, a lot of people are like, okay, we can't afford this. We know the bedrooms are upstairs. Now what do we do? Now we got to put a bed in the living room, this, that. Well, to me, when you're trying to modify to make people comfortable, you have to sacrifice some things, You have to look into, meet with Area Agency on Aging or social workers and other networks and find out what were useful tools for them to help support the family so that you can keep the loved one at home.
Yes, so for us, we were initially thinking we have to remodel like the entire either first floor or our downstairs floor or whatever. But it turned out as we talked to different people, it's like, hey, you can actually get a stair lift, and it was pretty affordable. And if it's not affordable to you, there are several programs that are available that I didn't realize. So now I'm telling most of my patients about these things. Like, make sure your home is safe. You don't have to look immediately into like a nursing home or like assisted living, and you can keep your loved one at home, and they'll probably be a lot happier and healthier at home too.
Oh yeah, and you get a chance to mentally relax more because you know that your loved one is there with you, not worrying and stressing out so much that you have to go visit them and find out something didn't go right in their day. So when they're home, you get a chance to connect with them more. And the love and the passion that you have for your loved ones, you can feel it. You're like, hey, I'm glad to see you. How was your day? Tuck them in bed. Everything goes along with that when you're a caregiver. When you're a caregiver, all bets are off. Okay?
Right.
Okay, so we truly do understand that. So I tell you what, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with some more good information on understanding caregivers fatigue and dementia. We'll be right back.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides at aarp.org/caregiving.
And welcome back. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know you got questions for Dr. Asha, but you know what? I tell you what you do. Get your pen and paper out and give us a call at 1-800-323-5336. Or you can always email me at Marsha@JustAskTalkShow. We'll get the questions over to her. Now, as we said today, it's understanding caregivers fatigue and dementia. You know, a lot of times if you're the caregiver, you're confused about where to get help from, how to get help, and you're doing all the work. So we want to ask Dr. Asha, as well as herself, for being a caregiver, how do you give your dad a break in there? I mean, I know you guys take turns, so what is it in for him? How does he get respite?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is that you want to build a team that you trust. And I think that the hardest thing for my father is that he's like, I'm the best one to take care of her because I know her and I don't know about having someone else come up in the house, or I don't know about what it's going to be like. I don't want to burden other family members, like that kind of thing. And a lot of us feel that, like, this is my responsibility, this is my spouse, this is my duty. And I completely respect that. He is the biggest superhero. He's amazing. But like I said, I'm working on the weekends. I come there and I try to help him out as much as I can. But sometimes you see the days where it's been a rough day. And so the important thing is that we have to build a team. So part of our team is, my sister lives out of state. She calls with the grandkids, FaceTimes, to have that kind of social interaction with the grandkids. That's always helpful. We have my mom's brother lives just down the road. So they come over. Sometimes they drop off food. Sometimes they come and just sort of say, hey, I'll feed her today, and maybe you take a break. We try to have someone come over to help clean the house at times, and like I said, I'm there on the weekends doing some of that stuff too.
So it's mostly family interaction.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And I think the other thing is that it's very helpful is that we have a pretty supportive church group. And what's nice is that oftentimes members of the church will come by and visit, drop off food. And I think that when I say visit, I think the important part is the caregiver is the one that's kind of socially isolated, as well as the actual patient. But, as time goes on, the patient starts kind of losing the awareness as much, but the caregiver feels it. And so a lot of times, someone like my father doesn't want to go out, doesn't want to leave her. But when people come over, it's a nice break for him to have some social interaction.
Right.
And for other family members or people in other situations, they may feel like, they want to have some time off and go somewhere or do something. Maybe you don't have a lot of family in the area. That's when things like the Alzheimer's Association comes into play, because they do offer respite care. There are agencies that do cover 30 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, a weekend, those kinds of things if you feel like, okay, I don't really have family members, or I don't have a lot of close friends or neighbors.
And that's important, because even though you're saying I'm the right one to care for my loved one, day in and day out, something's happening to you as well.
Yeah, you're going through a lot of emotions.
Physically and mentally, right?
Yeah.
So, you have this routine that you do for your loved one because you've got it down pat. I know what time they're going to wake up. I know what time they're going to eat. Know what time to get them dressed, go to bed and everything. But you yourself as the caregiver, the fatigue doesn't set in right away, but when it hits hard, and then you're almost too exhausted to do anything, or even think how to go outside again and be a part of society. Now, what is your take? And I'm just asking because even in my own experience, when my loved one passed, I felt like I still had the caregiver cape on. I was still trying to do the same thing, wake up at the same time, operate, and I said, there's no one there.
Yeah.
So do you have any, comments about?
Absolutely. So I see this a lot with my patients. I have a lot of patients that are caregivers, and they're the one that they're caregiving for is my patient as well. So I see multi-generational in that way. And I think one of the hardest parts is when that does happen, letting go is very difficult, and normalizing. And so one of my patients says, she was telling me her husband passed away, and same thing, she got up in the morning and just didn't know what to do with herself, and she was very depressed. And I told her, slowly start getting into the things that you used to do, or what are the things that you enjoyed doing, before you started really getting the caregiver role. And she was pretty down, and she said, there's nothing that I enjoy. I really don't want to do anything else. And that's when that team comes into play, the roster that you built of your friends and your family. That's one thing. My biggest advice is that if you are a caregiver and you're getting isolated, do not lose your friends and your family.
Yeah.
Those are the people that step up in those times. So maybe the first time you want to do something might be going out and just getting a cup of coffee and coming back. Just getting in the routine of re-socializing, going to a social activity, going to a spiritual activity.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that brings you joy. Maybe going out and gardening. Maybe you didn't have a garden for so many years because you didn't have the time to tend to it. So there are a lot of things that you can do, but I think that's a real problem of people losing a family member and then sort of readjusting.
Yeah, the aftermath is even more of a struggle than you can imagine. I mean, you're already first going through this process of being a caregiver and don't know it, you know. You say, oh, I'm just taking care of my mom, I'm just taking care of my dad, but it's ongoing. And then when, they leave us, we're like, wait a minute, what were we doing all this time? And day in and day out, I remember when I lost my dad, and I was telling my friends, I said, well, every year I spend my father's birthday with him. I said, this year I don't know what to do with myself. And my girlfriend said, well, why don't you come visit us in Virginia Beach? And I was so nervous. I was just so nervous to go out of town. And then when I went, I believe I cried. I'm sure I did, because it was just unreal that I was somewhere else outside of him. But it took years to unload that. And each time someone of my family, passed on, I had to figure out what to do to revise Marsha. And I suggest that people kind of go back into their thoughts of what was they doing before they became the caregiver and see if they can bring some of those type of things back into the fold.
Or even creating a new tradition. So it's like having you can still celebrate a heavenly birthday.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Oh, yes.
And so what do we do for Dad's birthday? Let's have a heavenly birthday party. Let's still, cut cake. Let's go to his favorite restaurant. Let's do what he loved to do. So creating new traditions is a great way of, a lot of times people feel a sense of guilt, like I'm going to go on vacation on my dad's birthday, those types of things. So there are different ways of coping, but one of the other things that I suggest is that if you are in the caregiver role, it's important to try to have a therapist or a very close someone that you can talk to about these things, because then as the time goes through, you evolve through the process. So you're mourning on a daily basis, really, because you're seeing the evolvement of a disease. And think about when people pass away, you have grief counseling, but I think what's important in dementia care and elder care, there is a constant counseling that needs to be happening to help you get your thoughts out, your emotions through, processing, and being able to continue to live on.
That's true, that's true. And we have a lovely picture of you and your mom, and I wanted to definitely bring that photo up that, we had a chance to have a picture of you and your mom. And that's very touching and warm picture. And at that point, what were you thinking when you had the chance to take the picture? I mean, I see you take a lot of pictures with your mom.
Oh yeah, I'm always taking pictures. I think a lot of people do that who have a loved one that's going through dementia, because there are certain days, like there's good days and bad days, and when there's those good days and her eyes are open and she's aware, I'm like snapping pictures like crazy, taking videos, because I want to have things to be able to remember her in her good days.
Oh yes.
And there are those bad days where she might be yelling, she might be agitated, or she's sleeping all day, like one of those things. So when you have those good days, I always encourage my patients and my friends, if they're caregiving, take those pictures, take those video moments, take the time to really enjoy and cherish that loved one.
Most definitely, most definitely. And you're so right, because a lot of people don't think about, the day-to-day, take a picture or, in the conversation. Just go ahead and be warm and take pictures and, compile the pictures to make yourself later on. You're gonna look over them again and remember that very moment, what was going on in that day.
And what's funny is one of my family friends said, oh my gosh, you're always posting pictures of your mother, and it's hard for us to see because she looks so different than she did when she was healthy. And I said, we have to accept this disease. Like, we can't hide it in the closet. It's not something that people get, just like mental health, there's this stigma. And so people feel like, I want to preserve the person that they were. But it's like, we evolve as people. We should celebrate life, and she's still with us. So I'm going to continue to celebrate her, as we all change and evolve.
Great, great. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to take a break, and ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back.
If you love them enough to suck the snot out of their nose at 4 a.m., then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the-right-seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
And welcome back to the show. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know that you all have questions that you want to ask Dr. Asha, and you probably have questions that you want to ask us here at Just Ask Talk Show. So, at the bottom of the screen, you see our number, 1-800-323-5336, Twitter, or email me, Marsha at Just Ask Talk Show. Now, you know, today is a special program for us because every time we do a segment called Just Ask the Doctor, we have a wonderful doctor come in, such as Dr. Asha, and she's telling us more or less about information that you have questions about. If you are a caregiver and if your family member has dementia, or just in general you're a caregiver and it doesn't have to be dementia, you do have concerns about how to take care of yourself along the way as you're taking care of your loved one. But Dr. Asha, I wanted to ask you something in particular. What are some of the signs, or how can a person know or determine if their loved ones have the early stages of dementia?
Yeah, so some of the things that tend to happen is just the forgetfulness, which I think everyone freaks out when they're like, oh gosh, I'm starting to forget, am I starting to get dementia? But this is more like forgetting words, forgetting names, forgetting familiar faces, you know, leaving the stove on, losing the keys. We all do that at times, but when it becomes more and more significant. I think the other thing is also there's a lot of emotional irregularity. So emotional outbursts that kind of seem a little bit like, why are you getting mad about that? Mm-hmm. Personality changes, someone's suddenly very moody or down in the dumps or not really wanting to do the activities that they used to want to do. Mm-hmm. Those are all kind of signs that maybe there's some neurocognitive changes happening. Yeah. And so, you know, for us, a lot of times you want to take your loved one to the doctor, and that's a hard thing to do because a lot of people are in denial, a lot of people are scared, mm-hmm. a lot of people are confused, you know, there's nothing wrong with me, it's just old age, it happens. But I think one of the things that you can do is one, you know, ask another friend or a family member, like, are you noticing these changes too? If it's consistent, like multiple people are kind of noticing, then it could be something to consider to be worrisome. Okay. Secondly, then I would say, you know, use I statements when you're talking to a loved one. Mm-hmm. So instead of saying, you've been acting different, you've been, you know, you.
Don't say you.
Yeah, instead maybe it's something like, you know, I've noticed that, you know, you've been forgetting the recipe of X, Y, and Z, or I've noticed that you've been a little bit emotional lately, or using the I statements kind of makes it seem more like you are worried, which you are, and less blaming. And so then that person doesn't feel as defensive. Okay. So once you can get them to see that maybe there is a problem, taking them to the physician is the first step, like a primary care such as myself. And that's when tests can be done to verify, is this truly dementia or is there some other process that needs to be ruled out? So those are some of the things that you can kind of look for in signs of early dementia.
Okay. So let me ask you this. At your practice at Corewell, and we know that Corewell used to be under the Beaumont title, yes. Now it's Corewell. If a person comes to the location where you're at and they say, well, you know, I need to have my mom, dad tested, is it more like as a blood work that can tell a person that something's going on cognitive, or what is something that a person can do when they come to a Corewell facility?
Yeah, so if you first come to your primary care doctor, that's where you start doing the routine test to rule other processes out. Is it a thyroid problem? Is it a vitamin deficiency? Is there an underlying depression happening? So there'll be screenings that will be done. So there'll usually be blood work, there'll be some physical exam, and then there'll be also looking at like medication side effects, like do a full review and a depression screening. After that, if it looks like, we're not finding any other cause for some of your symptoms, we probably, and then if we do what we call a mini mental test, which is a cognitive physical exam, if it looks like it might be worrisome, then there would be a referral to a neurologist or a neuropsychiatrist. There would be like a full day of neurocognitive testing, maybe some brain imaging to sort of see what is exactly going on. Because like there are several different types of dementia. And so making sure that you have the correct diagnosis so that you can get the correct treatments.
Okay, okay.
There are long-term care facilities that are contracted with, but they're usually it's like you see your regular physician, or if you get hospitalized, it's because you have some kind of acute issue that needs to be resolved. And then looking for long-term care facilities or looking for respite care, and all those social resources are usually usually found within the social work department or through the neurologist department or the primary care department.
And I know you spoke highly of Area Agency on Aging, so most people don't, familiarize themselves. They say, oh, that's the old people information, but they're very resourceful in getting you connected to some of the resources that you have to use.
And if you qualify for something like a hospital bed, and they ask what your insurance is, because sometimes an insurance company can cover the cost of a hospital bed. It's an expensive cost. And so things like that. And so another thing I wanted to bring up is that you can also have someone to talk to in terms of like, how do I make the room comfortable? So for my mom, we had to bring her from upstairs down to our basement. We have a walkout basement, which is good because then now she's got windows. So if you're trying to transport a caregiver to a different room in the house that they're not familiar with, making sure it's well lit, that it's not just a room that's all dark in there, that there is music, sound, television, things to make things comfortable, pictures. Those are the types of things that you want to think about also, not just the medical portion of it.
Right. Keep it lively.
Yeah.
And keep it joyful.
Yes.
Okay. And most definitely keep it secure.
Yes.
Okay. Top of the line is security. Yes. And all that is good, because to know, because a lot of people, like you said earlier, people are starting to discover that they have loved ones who have early stages of dementia, and they're trying to keep it to themselves.
Right.
They're like, okay, I'm going to do what I have to do, and I'm not leaving the home, or I'll take her with me everywhere I got to go, and this and that. And then they don't realize that they're burning themselves out at the same time that they're trying to do what they do. But they need to open up and speak to someone. It's like you said, social workers. Go to the nearest agency and find out what services are available out there, and that's important.
I think the biggest disservice is you're trying to protect your loved one, and you don't want the community to know, or you don't want people to know that they've changed, or there might be some moments of embarrassment. That's the biggest disservice, because I think the more that we as a society start accepting that this awful disease is unfortunately part of our fabric, that we can be more accepting and accommodating. We don't isolate caregivers, we don't isolate the patient, that it's okay if someone talks out of turn, it's okay if someone's yelling, it's okay if they're agitated. It shouldn't be such a shock to society. There are places in Europe that have villages of places where people have dementia, and they're all secure, and people go and hang out, and they have restaurants, and it's okay because it's not disruptive to others because they understand what's going on. So the more that we have shows like this that help people understand that education is key. It's okay not to be embarrassed, and it's okay to say, my loved one has dementia and I need help, I need support. Because if we're not honest with ourselves, we're really doing a huge disservice to the person we love most.
Well, I tell you, Dr. Asha, you gave us a breath of fresh air today in fatigue and, caregivers, because people are just over the top, and by you being, a person who's experiencing this yourself, we thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I hope that you'll come back and see us again.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. You tell the Corewell team we thank them for having you join us. All right. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, even I got a little choked up there because I'm a caregiver, so I know how important this is to Dr. Asha and so many of you. So please, by all means, if you have questions, get the number at the bottom of the screen, 1-800-323-5336, and send us a question, and we'll definitely reach out to her and get those questions answered for you, or you definitely will be able to find her on the Corewell listing of doctors, okay? I'm your host, Marsha Florence for Just Ask, and what do I always say? If you have a question about a person with a disability or just a general question, don't be afraid to ask, just ask. I'm your host.